I think it's really just the scale of it. The counterfeit world has sellers that might be operating on a website, but then they'll also have a social media account. They'll be running through private messaging apps as well and using different methods to kind of evade detection. And so I think the interconnectedness of everything has made it a much different place to operate.
For most of his career, Alastair Gray has been working to address the enormous trade in counterfeit goods. It's a multi-billion-dollar problem with extraordinary implications connected to money laundering, supporting human trafficking, and even funding terrorism. As the Director of Anti-Counterfeiting at INTA, the International Trademark Association, Alastair is working to unite law enforcement and stakeholders across industries and jurisdictions to stifle these vast networks. In this episode, Alastair takes us into the tangled world of counterfeiting, what INTA is doing about it, and how compliance experts can help. Welcome to Season 3 of BCG on Compliance, a podcast that explores today's most pressing criminal trends and how compliance professionals are adapting to stay ahead of that curve. I'm Hanjo Seibert. The first question I had for Alastair was about defining the financial size of counterfeiting and whether that's even possible.
It's really difficult to put a figure on it. I think global estimates show that it's huge. The OECD estimates that it's the trade in counterfeit and pirated goods, so this is kind of much more expanded than just counterfeit, is around $461 billion, and that was 2019. So obviously the world has advanced a lot further in that time, and it's around 2.5% of world trade. So other estimates put kind of 900 billion on it, even to 2.3 trillion. That was a study that INTA commissioned back in 2018. But it is really hard to pin down the figures because obviously counterfeits operate in a kind of shadowy economy. Jurisdictions have also different approaches to publishing seizure data as well. So you can only get a limited picture of the whole global environment of it. And I think the other side of it is that victims don't always come forward, or they don't know they're victims of counterfeiting. So this is a really hard picture to really accurately understand.
You mentioned the victims. I often hear, counterfeiting, that's kind of victimless, or it's just stealing from the big rich companies or the luxury brands, so that the kind of average person is not taking it so seriously. What do you say to shift that perspective?
Yeah, if you look at the articles that have come out in the last few years, even some in the last few months, there's been fake vodka and other alcoholic drinks that have caused death and blindness in the people that took those. You've got perfumes and cosmetics, even sun cream, that have caused burns and allergic reactions and have been found to contain lead and mercury and all sorts of other kind of nasty, toxic chemicals. And fake hairdryers or other equipment like mobile phone chargers that have caused house fires. And I mean, these aren't expensive luxury goods. They're not sold much below the genuine price. And even with the luxury goods, South Korean customs published seizures that they had made and found that even handbags and other luxury goods were containing toxic components, materials and glue. Often the metals had like lots of components of lead and cadmium in them, which you wouldn't necessarily want to wear against your skin. So I think the idea of changing the perspective is to say, let's be open and honest about counterfeiting. It's persistent, it's penetrated all types of products. This isn't limited to a certain industry. And there are kind of victims across the whole gamut, from rights owners, the manufacturers, to the governments and the environment. This is taking a huge amount of product that's ending up in landfill or being seized and needing to be destroyed. And then ultimately you've got a consumer at the end of it who has bought potentially a substandard product or even a toxic product that could really impact their health.
I mean, you convinced me, certainly. And looking at the other side, why are so many criminals choosing counterfeiting as their crime of choice or their best way to make money?
The scary thing is that it's considered by criminals because it's low risk and very high rewards. I think you've got very high margins on the products being sold to very low penalties for getting caught. So even when you have jail terms, they're usually pretty low or they're pretty rare. And so if you're dealing in counterfeit goods, you don't necessarily need specialist knowledge, unfortunately. You don't need networks to be able to sell the goods in the same way that you might need for drugs or weapons. And you can set up accounts relatively easily and remain anonymous. So counterfeiting is obviously truly international. You can operate across borders. And I think that's the other challenge as well for rights owners and law enforcement really, is because you have victims maybe spread across multiple jurisdictions. You've got some bad actor sitting somewhere behind a server that's maybe selling on a platform that's in another jurisdiction. So this all plays a role in making it really difficult to go after these criminals.
A question I just had when listening to you is, assume I'm a criminal. So I decide to go into counterfeiting. There must be some organizations in the back who produce these goods, because I wouldn't have the supply chain, the factories and so on.
Absolutely. So just to give you an example of a case that I worked on previously, it was an organized crime group, and they had structured its manufacturing base in Turkey, but it was operating across Europe. They were really sophisticated in that they had kind of multiple corporate entities that would be involved in the manufacturing, but then they would have others that would be obviously be doing the distribution. They would have a stock ordering website if you're a business customer. They would have kind of e-commerce platform listings if you're a consumer. And they would really kind of switch and adapt to the different ways that brand owners are going after them and shutting down the different kind of avenues where they were selling, but also pivoting to different jurisdictions. If suddenly they had a raid in, say, Germany, they would switch and go to the Czech Republic for 6 months or so. But they were able to do this by having that kind of constant supply chain. But I think the challenge was with things like fake invoices, and they'd even set up their own brands to be able to move goods across borders without detection. So registering their own trademarks and having fashion shoots and product catalogs that looked really legitimate meant that they could kind of swim in the legitimate sea, as it were, and reach the consumers who didn't really suspect anything because the quality was high. The challenge was, once you'd sold to a business customer, then they go out and distribute it everywhere. So in that way, they had it kind of sewn up end to end to a point where they could just basically walk away from the onward sale and no one would know that they were involved. But we were able to kind of detect them because they were so prolific. Their products were quickly identified. Like they would be using either the same packaging or the same labeling on the products. They became identifiable. So whenever there was a customs seizure or a police raid or a test buy, we could always say, okay, it's that group there.
And how do you in INTA, or you in your role, then intervene? I mean, are you puzzling this? Is this like in a crime movie where you stand on a whiteboard and you kind of try to map all the different pieces and then give that intelligence to the police who conducts the raid? Or how do you intervene?
The intervention part is really important. The key to this is basically building alliances between brands and different stakeholders as well, whether it's kind of police and customs, prosecutors, and like the rights owners, the law firms, and really to understand what is this challenge. If there's one group that's acting, how do we get together and understand that we're all being affected by the same groups and the same crime gangs? That's really the key to my role now is that bringing people together.
At INTA, Alastair is focused on policy and engagement. But he began his career as an investigator. After university, he started working on the visitor security team at Buckingham Palace. And from there, he made a leap into counterfeit investigation. I was curious how it all happened.
I guess it was a combination of luck, a keen eye for detail, and basically being willing to be a bit nosy. But the world of IP trademarks and fakes was just not on my radar at all until 2006, when I came across a 20-word advert to become an intellectual property investigator. And it offered full training, some international travel, and I thought, why not? I was literally just thrown into everything, from trademark and use investigations, doing covert domain name purchases and undercover test purchases for counterfeit car parts or toys, even power tools. And that really kind of helped me later on to investigate counterfeits. And I also got used to kind of going on my own into random shops and addresses and buying things without drawing too much attention to myself, whether it was fake sandals or even sweets that I had to go and try and buy kind of big batches of it to check that it was counterfeit. And I really was there through the kind of growth of e-commerce and also kind of how social media really became the window of opportunity for counterfeiters as well. So I was exposed to a lot of this stuff at the very beginning of my career, really. And I think what I found trademarks and brands is that there's no day is the same, and it touches every part of our lives. So after doing all that, I kind of never really looked back.
Nice. You got me with the unlimited shopping on somebody else's account. But on a serious note, what led you to INTA at the end?
It wasn't until 2016 that I moved from the UK to the Netherlands to join a big international fashion brand. And basically on day one, I was sitting there with my manager. She had a map of the world and was explaining kind of what my colleagues were going to be doing and what I was going to be doing. She just drew a big circle around the world and said, okay, the internet, that's yours. Just go off and fix that for us. And I never really looked back, to be honest. It was just getting stuck into all the different parts of the internet where there are problems. And I took a very kind of practical approach to that, but also got involved in a lot of policy work. So I realized that there was a lot of kind of engagement work needed. And actually, that's kind of what led me into INTA.
Nice. How, in your words, has the world of counterfeit brands changed throughout the years?
I think it's really just the scale of it. I remember working on cases back in the day when, say, Facebook groups had just been launched. And that was a far cry from a classified ads thing. That was kind of social networks being used to really interact and sell things. But these would be people just selling products out of their front door. But then you kind of look at today and you have hundreds of thousands of small parcels moving across the world. There's so much more trust in online shopping that sellers can be anonymous. They can fulfill orders without ever touching the goods as well. So that's definitely changed the landscape. And I think basically brand protection teams now can't look at problems in silos. The counterfeit world has sellers that might be operating on a website, but then they'll also have a social media account. They'll be running through private messaging apps as well and using different methods to kind of evade detection. And so I think the interconnectedness of everything has made it a much different place to operate. Counterfeiters and scammers are creating hundreds of thousands of accounts and websites, which are even configured to geo-block visitors from outside certain jurisdictions. So again, brand owners find it really hard to see those websites and take action. You have kind of portals and things where you can kind of take content down much quicker these days. Has also meant that counterfeiters they've gone underground, but then they also get the exposure. So you can go on private messaging forums and really find out how to buy counterfeits. If you run a search for things like hidden links fashion, you'll see hundreds of dedicated websites that will basically show you how to go out and buy a counterfeit. I think that's really changed the landscape as well, that you're not just dealing with the consumer that might be tricked into buying a counterfeit. You've got a whole kind of subsection of people that are intentionally going out and buying it. That's really also changed the landscape.
Super fascinating, and wondering if you have any more cases that you can share with our audience.
So in the pure online counterfeiting space, one of the big issues has been sponsored counterfeit adverts. This is where a criminal network will put an advert on, say, social media. It runs for a very limited time and will lead consumers to a destination website where they can kind of check out, get hopefully a 90% discount, and then maybe a few weeks later get a product through the post. The problem with this kind of scheme is that they are investing huge amounts of money. So I've seen upwards of kind of $50,000 being put towards advertising of a single advert. And one of these investigations showed on the destination website, you ended up with a kind of UK corporate entity. And then when you dug into that, it went to a kind of Hong Kong entity. Then that had an ultimate owner that was set up in the Cayman Islands. And this is all from one advert that was selling and delivering kind of counterfeit goods. And by the end of it, we were able to find a print on demand type location, pretty much a guy with a printing press, like stamping down on T-shirts in an apartment block. But it kind of just shows like the level of infrastructure needed to kind of operate the website and the adverts still went back to some person sitting in a room printing the actual goods to deliver on it. It was just baffling to see kind of the scale of it once you'd, like you say, mapped out on a whiteboard, where is all this leading to one location in an apartment block somewhere in China.
In some of the work you're describing there, I see a lot of similarity to the work that I'm, for example, doing in looking at anti-money laundering, etc., for banks. Have you or are you planning at some point to work together with banks on a joint investigation?
Yes, absolutely. There's a lot of work being done by the rights owners in terms of going after the financial instruments behind these counterfeiters. And that's whether seizing the accounts in situ, but also looking at the front end in terms of disrupting at the point of consumers when they go there and they visit a website. Can you kind of identify and pinpoint the payment processor and then get them to close down the website based on counterfeit? So there's a lot of attention being put on that at the moment. And I think there are some exciting things coming down the road, hopefully next year, in terms of how different people can work together. And that's both on the investigator side of things. I think consultants, investigators can really help tease that information out. And I think banks as well, taking on more of the identifiers of the counterfeit websites and kind of scam websites that are related to brands, especially when they're using brand assets and they're using marketing materials that are stolen from corporates. There should be some really interesting developments in the coming year or so on this.
One of the big fallouts of counterfeiting is the enormous environmental impact of disposing of these goods. It's another huge challenge that INTA is working on.
Sustainable destruction of counterfeits really needs to be addressed. I don't necessarily like the word destruction of counterfeits. It feels like it should be deconstruction and recycling is the way to go. But I think at the moment, to do this at scale, the world isn't really set up to consolidate shipments of counterfeit goods from different jurisdictions, which would allow you to kind of process this in such the volumes that you need, really. You kind of have shoes and clothes with unknown material compositions, which makes it difficult in terms of recycling those. And with perfumes and cosmetics, you can't really reuse them apart from the packaging in that way. You don't really know what's in them. And with electronics, you have wiring and batteries that need to be stripped down to kind of raw materials as well. So there's a huge amount of work. But the problem with the counterfeit is kind of who owns it once it's been seized. If you recycle it, you end up with the raw product. Who owns that? And how do you go on to reuse it knowing that it's safe? So at INTA, we have a special team that's comprised of rights owners and anti-counterfeiting organizations and legal counsels that are looking into collecting the data about how counterfeits are being destroyed and recycled around the world. And over the next 6 to 8 months, we're going to be looking at bringing that data forward, publishing a report, and really hoping to bring more people together to understand the problem and how we can go about solving it.
And what are your biggest worries in how these crimes are evolving in the future?
The main one, which always at the back of my mind, is how the good guys can keep up with the bad guys in terms of technology. Counterfeiters are so swift to adapt, and they're already using technology like AI, and whether that's to do research, generate fake reviews, or potentially help with kind of manufacturing of counterfeit goods. On the other side of it, you have counterfeiters being driven into places that are harder to reach and analyze from the investigators, whether that's kind of the private access websites or forums where you can learn how to buy counterfeits. And you have the explosion of content. Again, how do you process all this content to understand if it's legitimate or not? Because at the moment you have kind of influencers that are setting up just to sell counterfeit goods. They get commission through telling their followers to use discount codes that have their name in it. And then while this is pretty underground, it's pretty widespread. This just makes it easier for counterfeiters to reach that larger audience and avoid detection. So I think the scale of the problem is a big point. And I think that second point ties into a third one, which is changing consumer attitudes. In Europe and the UK, recent studies have shown kind of a growing acceptance of counterfeit goods among the younger generations, particularly Gen Z. So many view counterfeits as affordable alternatives to expensive goods, and you have the word dupe, which has kind of gone again mainstream. So a dupe is a way of saying a counterfeit, but not so bad in kind of normal parlance, I guess. And so basically the shift in perception of counterfeits is really challenging for everyone, because it's kind of normalizing the idea that a counterfeit is okay.
So let's maybe close it up with a round of just what, in your view, can compliance experts or professionals in like working in companies, what can they do to support INTA's work?
So I think compliance experts can guide companies in knowing how to address these challenges that they might be facing or will face in the future. For instance, having a joined up intellectual property rights strategy is like fundamental. If you want to go after counterfeit goods, you need to know what intellectual property you have, but also ensuring with due diligence, investigations, manufacturing and supply chain is fully vetted, is resilient to insider threats as well. That's a kind of big thing, whether it's on kind of regular auditing of factories to prevent IP being leaked out, from putting simple padlocks on storage containers, or to having effective cybersecurity measures put in place as well. Because I've seen over the years, things like supplier invoice fraud has an impact when a company gets phished or hacked. But if your trade secrets are stolen, or valuable IP or designs are leaked out the back door as well, then that can have a huge long-term reputational risk on your company. So securing at the foundational level of the company itself, I think is a real key area where compliance can really step in.
Perfect. And last question from my end, what can normal citizens or normal people do?
Stay sharp when you're shopping. I think you said you haven't come across many counterfeits, which is a really good thing. But counterfeiters and scammers prey on people seeking a good deal, and they'll exploit that. So awareness really is key. In the same way that we want people to be alert to scam emails, phone calls, and messages for like when they're doing their online banking, we also need to increase the awareness of counterfeits in shopping. So if you just find a few of the common red flags, that should be enough to like not continue with the purchase, whether that's a 70 to 90% discount, the poor packaging that you can see in the screenshots, or discrepancies in the branding that you might be familiar with. An extra 5 minutes of verification when you're shopping online can prevent identity theft or you losing money, and then ultimately ending up with a counterfeit good as well. So by spreading awareness, we can also help others make informed shopping decisions. So INTA has the Unreal campaign, which is a consumer awareness initiative to educate young consumers about the importance of trademarks and brands and the dangers of counterfeit products. And they do that through real-world presentations, going into schools and universities that really kind of connect on that personal level. But we also have a social media campaign as well to meet young people where they're searching and shopping and connecting, because ultimately everything has become fair game for counterfeiters. So we just need to keep banging that drum and saying, please avoid that if you can, because you'll either have your identity stolen, you'll end up with a counterfeit good, or much more serious, you could have serious health risks from these as well.
Oh, this was quite illuminating. Really great to speak to you today. Thank you so much, Alastair.
Thank you.
Is counterfeiting on your compliance radar? Join the conversation by connecting with us on your podcast app, writing a review of the show, or emailing us at bcgonCompliance@bcg.com. Be sure to subscribe to get more insights from compliance innovators. I'm Hanya Seibert. Thanks for listening.